We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it.
The problem with America is not that we go around marauding around the world imposing ourselves. The problem with America in the last 10, 15 years since the end of the Cold War, really in the last 60 years, is that we've been too slow to get involved.
I don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed, but I can assure you that the number is the absolute minimal that it's possible in modern warfare.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
You know, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Welcome to the Darkened Hour.
Welcome to another episode of the Darkened Hour. I'm your host, Adam Fitzgerald, and for the first time in the show's history, I have a reoccurring guest. And I couldn't have asked for a better guest to talk about the issues of two things, the FBI Encore files and the latest Canestraro files, Anthony Shaffer. Anthony Shaffer is the president of the London Center of Policy Research, a New York Times bestselling author and CIA-trained intelligence operations officer with 35 years of experience in global and national security. In his think tank work, he is an advisor to the senior members of the White House, the intelligence community, Pentagon, and key members of Congress. He also works with the National Geographic as an advisor, producer, and co-producer of the series Chain of Command. In 2017, he became the Homeland Security Advisor to the Stafford County Sheriff's Department in Virginia and works as its member of the NYPD Counterterrorism Bureau's expanded task force. His New York Times and international bestselling memoir, Operation Dark Heart, Spycraft and Special Ops on the Frontlines of Afghanistan and the Path to Victory, provides an unprecedented look at intelligence operations during a period in the Afghanistan war in 2003. Anthony, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Adam, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me back as the first repeater. Deja vu all over again, as a certain great baseball coach once said. So
yes, indeed, Yogi Berra. And I, we were talking before I pressed record, and I wanted to reach out to you when the declassification of Encore came out. Yeah. But when Canestraro file came out, I was like, oh my God, what a bombshell. And so I guess my first question would be, when it was released, how much of an effect does this have regarding the investigation into 9/11, and what did this mean to you?
Trying to think. I think the actual effect, or my belief, is there's a mountain of evidence now coming to the forefront that shows that multiple opportunities, will be polite, to examine the framework of the 9/11 plot, the whole plot, was available long before disclosed by the government. And I think we able danger with the canary in a coal mine, and let me explain what I mean by that. There's clearly other things out there. You just talked about one of the things that just finally came out, but it was pretty clear, Adam, that the 9/11 Commission's job was to create a solid dam around the narrative, basically to come out there and make sure that anything that went against the narrative was pushed way back. They didn't know about us. We were an anomaly. We were so far off the reservation, for better or for worse. People didn't know that we were doing what we were doing. So when it came time for the investigation, none of us had signed non-disclosures. None of us had been told not to do it. We were just so small. It took time for us to get exposed to the 9/11 commissioner. So what we did was kind of penetrate that overall dam. And now it's like a trickle, like little things are coming up. Little by little, things are rising up. And I think that's what we're talking about here with the FBI information. It's like, yeah, there was other indicators. Colleen Rowley, Colleen Rowley was another whistleblower who
Mhm.
attempted to put information up front. And I actually did a talk with her, man, 12 years ago
Oh,
in the
wow.
9/11 anniversary, the year my book came out, Operation Dark Heart. And it was very clear that any information that contradicted or factually refuted the 9/11 Commission narrative was not welcome, and anybody who spoke against it, even now, if you go say things that contradict the 9/11 Commission thing, it's considered disinformation, and the algorithm goes against their videos. We were just talking about
That's right.
Stephen Gardner. Stephen Gardner actually had the cojones to ask me questions about this a while back out of the blue. And next thing you know, YouTube went crazy over our conversation. And all I did, and it's out there for people to watch. I think you've watched this. Like, I just restated what I've stated probably a half a dozen times already publicly. And yet somehow that was against. So I think that's the effect here, Adam, is that it's like the dam had to be broken. And little by little, things are coming through. I'm just looking forward to the day when finally the whole thing collapses on its own weight, and all the truth gushes out. So
Let me follow up to that too.
sure.
Are you expecting more information to come from Canestraro in the future?
Oh yeah, no doubt. So full disclosure, I've talked to Don. I was called in 11 years ago. I don't think I'm saying it's not already been out there, but the Military Commissions Defense Organization, which Don Canestraro belongs to, is the defense team of the 9/11 plot hijackers, whatever you call it, the guys who planned it. They were the group who were originally arrested as under the original authorized use of military force, AUMF, that was used to breach Afghanistan, go into Pakistan, all these things back in 2001, 2002, 2003. So he's one of the investigators helping defend them. And I was asked about 11 years ago by Don and the team, it's like, would you be willing to assist us? And I gotta be honest with you, I wasn't reluctant at all. I was like, sure, your guy, as much as I think your clients are guilty, I think there's a lot of things that have not been disclosed. And basically their theory, and I don't think I'm giving up anything that's not obvious already. Their theory is the government, US government, was a co-conspirator in the attacks. That's it. That's the bottom line. That while their guys are probably guilty, I'm not here to judge that. I can only go with what the public disclosures are regarding their role. I have no inside knowledge on that. What I do know is that my personal experience indicated to me through Able Danger and the cover up after that, the government had a full knowledge of a number of the 9/11 hijackers, to include the patterns of behavior, locations, the fact that we had invested. This is one of the facts, Adam, that people tend to forget. Able Danger is not so much about the fact we knew about the hijackers. It's about the fact that the Department of Defense, through Hugh Shelton to President Clinton, had invested a blue ribbon team to go and be prepared to kill them. Remember that. I mean, this was a military operation, so it wasn't just, we're curious about 9/11, about Al Qaeda. They had invested an entire operational set of missions to go kill Al Qaeda because they thought it was that great a threat. And so people tend to forget. It's like, the data mining. We're skeptical they found Mohammed Atta. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. The fact is the United States government saw that Al Qaeda was a significant threat enough that we put together a black special operations team to be prepared to kill them. And that very fact seems to be kind of, no big deal. How do you miss that? How do you miss that being a key issue? And yet nobody wants to talk about that. But beyond that, we did, through the data mining, find the cells of the 9/11 hijackers. And again, we weren't the only ones. I think others did too. And I think that's what's going to be trickling out more and more as we get people more and more sensitized to coming out. And I think Don and his team will be pushing a lot more out, because they're the ones who have the charter, the budget, and the motive. I mean, their motive is to defend their clients, to get information out, because the more information they can get out on this that relates to the fact that the government was either negligent or a co-conspirator will help their defense. And I'm all for it.
Yeah, let me touch on when you say co-conspirator, what do you mean by what type of level of is it foreknowledge or complicity?
So that's the question. Is it foreknowledge or is it complicity? So
Could be both.
so the FBI documents that Don is and CI documents that Don's talking about, and also Catherine Herridge from CBS, she was at Fox at the time when she was reported on Anwar al-Awlaki. Anwar al-Awlaki was the cleric in San Diego who got rolled up by the FBI at a massage parlor. I just, maybe Muslim clerics are different than Catholic clerics. I don't know these things. I'm not a religious guy, so I don't know. But anyway, they rolled him up and they said, "You're going to work for us from here on." And then during the time that he was an FBI informant, after in the late 90s, somehow magically, Adam, two of the 9/11 hijackers show up and he escorts them around. I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
That's Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi.
Exactly. So how do you not notice that the FBI somehow was running Anwar al-Awlaki and these guys were being escorted around? Nothing like that happens randomly, Adam. So that indicates to me that there was some level of at least complicity, if not cooperation, by the FBI. I'm just telling you. I mean, and then if you expand that out to the other sectors, the CIA, the things that Don was talking about, it gives a really dim picture regarding the government and its role in this. And, one of the theories, now I rarely theorize, and I'm going to do this on your show, and I don't like theorizing because I'm not a conspiracy guy. I've worked very hard not to be a conspiracy guy, but my belief, based on what I'm seeing, is that the government may well have been involved. The government was involved. Let's just state that the government was involved with the 9/11 hijackers. That's one of the reasons. Like within 2 days, they had identified every one of these knuckleheads by name and address right after the 9/11 attacks because they knew who they were. And that was like they announced it. So my belief is that the government somehow, like many things the FBI does, they were trying to prompt it. They were trying to poke these guys to do something, and it happened in a catastrophic way that they did not anticipate. That was much greater. Much like the FBI will take and use informants. Like the 93 hijackers. The 93 bombers and World Trade. They had those guys pretty well penetrated, and that happened anyway. And the same thing here. I think they were fully witting that these guys were plotting, and the plot may have gotten away from them. But anyway you cut it, the FBI was involved in the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah, I've always said, to people in my circles that, I can make a great case, a great argument that the intelligence services, and we're just sticking with the domestic here, the domestic intelligence services basically were knowledgeable about at least two of the hijacks, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, and later on Hani Hanjour, and then you have the Hamburg cell out east.
Right.
And, at the same time, now this is, of course, I'll speculate along with you, so you won't be alone and the man on your own island. So I happen to think that the NSA, which is the one agency hardly anyone ever talks about, basically heard about the plot at the Yemen hub, or because they were also monitoring bin Laden's satellite phones when he was in Sudan and later in Afghanistan.
Right.
I happen to think that Al Qaeda was talking about plots. Now, it's a daring charge. I don't have evidence for it. But if they want to manipulate the plot and take advantage of it, well, this would fit well with the latest Canestraro files and what we've learned from Operation Encore.
Right.
And I don't think it's too irresponsible to theorize this way when we talk about, scenarios like this. But I mean, it fits right well with the evidence that we have so far at our disposal.
So let me add an aspect that may help you on your theory, because I think you're on the right track. The classified holdings of Able Danger, when we moved the operation down to Garland, Texas, one of my unit's tasks was to move a copy of the NSA database. The whole thing.
That's Stratus Ivy, by the way.
Stratus. Well, yes, my unit. So just so the audience know, I ran a special mission unit called Stratus Ivy. Stratus Ivy was my command. I was in command of a unit that did black operations support, everything from remote viewing, and I'm not joking, remote viewing, the X-Files type stuff, all the way to enabling operations for supporting weaponized technology. We did everything that everybody was afraid of, just because we didn't care. We by the way, our motto was on our on the right there's the thing. Our motto was raising, it was in Latin, by the way, but our motto was raising our leg on a frightened world. It was just kind of a funny thing. Anyway, Stratus Ivy was assigned a concierge and operation support role to Able Danger. That's how I came into it. I came into it both as a reservist. I was a major at the time. My reserve duty was spent supporting Able Danger, as well as my civilian role, which is GS-14, Senior Intelligence Officer, which was to run this task force, to run Stratus Ivy. And so part of what I accepted, I mean, it was kind of funny. I could task myself, to do these things. So part of my job was to facilitate the transfer of the entire NSA database from NSA down to Garland, Texas for Special Operations Command. And that the purpose of that, Adam, was to take the unclassified 3+ terabytes of data. I mean, this was huge amounts of data for the time. It took us 6 months. Back then, you couldn't do 3 terabytes in an hour. It took us 6 months using spiders and Lloyd's of London databases, using researchers to go into the mosques to get their records, all this data, unclassified data. And then the NSA data and the DIA data was used to confirm or refute the open source. So basically it would come together behind a classified wall, and there was a confirmation process going through from using the top secret data to confirm. So some of that had to do with intercepts from different parts of the world to confirm the links. So when we talk about links, we talk about the summary of our conclusions. We can't get into details how we arrived at those, but I'm kind of telling you how we did. We basically took the top secret, the unclassified data, compared it to the top secret data, and those data sets which overlapped, we considered confirmed. So that's a large part of what we did regarding the targeting packages we were putting together.
And let me go back in time for a little bit, because this is one area I desperately wanted to speak with you on. That's Operation Encore. And when Operation Encore started, what was it, 2007, 2006, 7? It was led by the San Diego FBI agent Danny Gonzalez and a handful of other New York City agents as an extension of sorts from the previous FBI investigation, Pentagon. And what I would like to get your thoughts on, and there was I'm halfway through, and it was 8,000 files. I think it was like 15,500 something files, and you probably didn't read all of it, so
no.
But you were aware of the operation. What are your thoughts about the Encore documents that were released under the Biden administration in 2021? Overall?
So, well, as you know, one of my partners in crime on this is the late Walter Jones, God rest his soul. Walter, as you probably remember, was instrumental in getting the classified FBI documents finally declassified, which indicated the Saudi Arabians were involved. So this, I think, directly relates to that by the fact that I think the FBI has had a number of areas which they've been reluctant to admit certain knowledge they had, either before, after, or during the 9/11 attacks. And of course, the role of the Saudis is one of the third rail issues that they don't want to talk about. So the fact that I think the Encore files and operation tends to confirm the deepest and darkest suspicions of a lot of folks right after 9/11, which was the Saudis funded the whole thing. The Saudis were essentially that indispensable partner that allowed for all of it to go. And remember, at one point, Adam, they had a shot at bin Laden in Afghanistan on a I think they were out doing with the birds. What do you call it when they have the birds and they're doing?
This is bin Laden's falconing.
Falconing.
Yep.
And the chief of Saudi intelligence is right next to him, and that was the reason they decided not to take the shot, because they would have killed the Saudi. Well, there's a clue for you right there.
Right.
That the chief of Saudi intelligence is talking to bin Laden. So, and we didn't kill him. I mean, we could have, because we had the finding. The finding existed. Alex Station had the finding to kill bin Laden. He was in the open.
That's correct.
And we didn't do it. So you have to ask yourself why. So this information, I think, illustrates and that is to say the information relating to Encore illustrates with great detail beyond the Anwar al-Awlaki issue, beyond some of the things Don Canestraro said, that the FBI had a direct and undeniable contact with those who were involved in the attacks, and that's significant. Now, the question becomes, who else in the FBI knew about it?
Right.
I don't think, for example, Louis Freeh knew about it. Louis actually did an editorial supporting me when in the 9/11 when we testified back in 2005, 2006. So the question becomes, and I do believe this is to be true, I think certain seniors don't even know some of the things their own agency's doing, and I tend to believe that whatever was going on here, the folks on the top floor were not aware of it, because if they were told about it, they may well have done something to stop it or involve themselves in it. So I think there's some real indicators here that some entity within FBI tied to other government agencies, and again, I hate to sound conspiratorial, but it seems to me that there was a larger a whole of government effort to facilitate these guys being led around and preparing for them to have access to the aircraft on the 9/11 for the 9/11 attacks. So
I'm preaching to the choir here, because I've interviewed, Colleen Raleigh, Ken Williams, Mark Rossini, and these are all whistleblowers as well. I mean, you had others like Robert Wright Jr. from Chicago. I mean, there were people trying to warn their superiors about, and a growing number of Arab fundamentalists training at flight schools and connections inside the United States.
Right.
Now, you talk about don't sounding too conspiratorial. Well, Fahad Nasser, who's a spokesman for the Saudi embassy in Washington, he went on the public record saying that any suggestion that Saudi Arabia aided the 9/11 plot was rejected by the 9/11 Commission in 2004, and also by the FBI and the CIA in their own reports in 2005, and a second independent commission in 2015. So it wasn't. It's not. This ain't no, fictitious fringe conspiracy. This is actually on the record.
Yeah.
And it's a widespread conspiracy, because there has to be at some level, and we're just we could section off the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. At some level, some of those people in those agencies made a conscious decision to either withhold information that could stop 9/11, or acted on the information but didn't. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think it's a fair assessment. So again, it's like the opening of the conversation and my metaphor of the dam kind of beginning to break. I think a lot of folks saw a lot of things before 9/11, and there's some folks that made some pretty outlandish claims. I don't want to get into too far into some of these things, but some of those things need to be investigated. And other folks who had direct knowledge try to go up the chain of command. And look, and this is my defense, Stratus Ivy, we were running probably a dozen, and I only had to do global. We were doing everything globally. I mean, we had a unit that was doing global operations with 15 people. And if you took the reservists I had, we maybe had 25. And within the holdings of Stratus Ivy, we had 3 operational locations, and we were running some of the most classified black operations ever. I mean, some of these things are still completely, we just can't talk about them.
Right.
But the idea was Able Danger was just one of about 8 major initiatives. And so everything was important. So when you got everything is important, what's the most important? So when we did it, the Able Danger, the 9/11 guys, that whole issue was like one of things. There was a number of things that could always bite us. I'm just saying, there's, the Iranians, the North Koreans, the Chinese, the Russians. We were doing a little bit of all that, and just saying. And so when it's all important, how do you focus on what's most important? And I suspect that other folks were the same way, Adam. If you're actually doing your job in the government, it's hard because you're fighting the bureaucracy constantly. If you have information that your boss doesn't want to hear, you're going to be chided for it. The folks who do the best, like John Brennan, Jim Clapper, they're the ones who always will never talk about bad news to their principals because they want to get promoted. They will purposely compromise their integrity for purposes of personal gain. They do. That's how they get to where they're at. So people like me are inconvenient because I just don't care. If I get promoted, that's great. If I don't, okay. My job is to do my job. And I suspect others who were like-minded were just like, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm just trying to get the information out. I'm not trying to seek promotion. I'm certainly not going to get promoted if I say things that my leadership don't want to hear. But that's the purpose of of being a sworn intelligence officer, Adam. You're supposed to do that. So I suspect these other folks are kind of at the same dilemma. It's like, do I say something or not? Because I've seen what happened to others when they've come forward.
Sure.
And it's not a pretty picture. You're going to get pilloried no matter what. And I think that's the thing. So I'd like to believe people are going to continue to be encouraged by others coming forward, by people like Don Canestraro saying things that echo the fact that other folks know the truth out there. And I think little by little, we're going to chip away at that dam of the 9/11 Commission.
One name that came up in the Encore files, and one name that was prominent with Donald Canestraro, was Omar al-Bayoumi. And one incredible finding in the Encore investigation, I remember going nuts when I read it, was when Bayoumi left for his home in Birmingham, England in 2001, the Scotland Yard actually investigated Bayoumi after the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah.
So they went to his house, and incredulously, a detective found a spiral notebook that contained a hand-drawn aviation diagram of a plane descending to strike a spot on the ground. Now, one FBI agent had studied aeronautical engineering and concluded that the diagrams in the notebook showed a formula for an aerial descent similar to that of Flight 77 into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Before it struck the Pentagon. Now, apparently, the notebook and its contents went unnoticed after Bayoumi's detention, and nobody looked at it ever again, including the FBI, who were aware of this.
Yeah. Look, Adam, the FBI, the modern FBI, an action passed is an action completed. If they looked at it once, like, oh, okay, nothing here.
Right.
There's no intellectual curiosity. I know from having dealt with FBI on human trafficking issues, they don't want to deal with things which are controversial. They will. I was talking to one of the folks over there, one of their senior executives. He says, Tony, when you make a call, you demand that they do something, all they're going to do is do a memo saying, on this date, I spoke to X and Y, I did this, and they send it in. That's it. There's no, they don't want to go beyond anything they have to do, because doing more, for example, here, if they had taken that and started asking questions, they would have immediately been sat on, because, how dare you start believing there's a conspiracy bigger than what you're doing here? So there's no upside to trying to put pieces together. They've completely removed from the FBI any ability for them to think creatively or actually do investigations. It's all about a rigid set of operational directives that focus on a handful of issues, none of which are controversial, none of which are going to get them in trouble. And all they do, it's the truth, all they do is seek to get convictions with the DOJ. That's it. And they have to go in with overwhelming evidence. So something like this, which is soft, I had a friend of mine, very close friend, who was part of the transition where the FBI started doing counterterrorism stuff. I can tell you for a fact it was difficult, because they're used to having a case assignment, an open case, a 201, and basically that case is open until they either close it because there's no evidence, or they close it because of a conviction. That's it. There's always some outcome. Terrorism investigations, counterintelligence investigations, you don't always have that. So it's a bit more of a soft thing, and it's a very difficult thing to do. So,
I mean, even if they just did a follow-up, they would have known that Omar al-Bayoumi was the Saudi agent that was facilitating the arrival of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi.
Right. But they didn't want to.
And at the same time, the CIA is withholding that information from the FBI at the Bin Laden issue station.
Right. I don't think they wanted to know. Again, I remember back some of the stuff we were doing. I had to recount, when I was talking to Stephen Gardner, my meeting with Dave Ralph. Dave Ralph was the Central Intelligence Agency rep to Special Operations Command in 1999 when we started all this. And I had to outline what able danger was to him. I had to basically brief him. Now, Dave, I like Dave. Please don't take any of my comments as being critical of Dave. I like Dave a lot. He was a retired, he came out of the Army case officer program and went into the CIA. So I had a lot of respect for him. Dave basically said that because Alex Station was the lead for the finding, that is to say, finding means you have the right to assassinate him. Because CI had that lead, they would never cooperate with us, with DOD, because we were seen as competition for them. So there would be no cooperation or information sharing because it was just basically, you're on your own. We're doing our thing. And Dave was very direct about it. And again, I don't blame him. He was just honest, like, no, unless you get General Pete Schoonmaker, the commander of Special Operations Command, to talk to George Tenet directly, there'll be no cooperation unless those two can break through the firewall. Even Tenet told me one time during a meeting with him, because I was complaining about something that they were supposed to do to help us on one of my operations.
Mhm.
And he basically said, yeah, I can't get him to do things sometimes.
What does that even mean?
I wasn't even mean. So I'm just saying that, these guys they're not designed to go out there and be curious or try to put things together. Everybody gets in their little silos,
Mhm.
and they seem to be very focused in that. So,
And and I can understand why certain people could say or believe in certain conspiracies about, one thing, maybe they wanted the attacks to happen and whatnot. And I really can't argue against this because, boy, do they give the clues that they really tried their best not to investigate,
right,
not to impede or interfere with these people.
right. And
Um,
again, and one of the things that I think I mentioned last time when we talked about Able Danger, there was one aspect. There's two aspects of Able Danger which are still beyond top secret, which I still can't get into. But one of them had to do with the fact that we had contemplated stopping these guys directly if need be. That is to say that there was a specific plan within the context of Able Danger, if nobody else acted, to just go take them out.
Right.
Because that was how concerned we were. So again, Adam, it's not like we didn't recognize that something was going on. We actually on our own, or I should say Special Operations Command on its own, decided rightfully, we're going to put together a capability to go take care of these guys if everything else fails, which I think is the right thing to do.
right.
And again, history would have been a lot different if permission had been granted for us to go do something about it. Because that, again, the whole concept was offensive operations against Al Qaeda. That's what we were supposed to be standing on edge, leaning forward to go after these guys. And we were all mystified. It's like, how come we couldn't go kill them? Because we would have. Trust me, the guys I deal with would love a shot to go out and kill these guys before 9/11. There was no doubt
Absolutely.
about that.
Look, you had George Tenet declaring war on Al Qaeda in 1999.
Right.
I mean, for goodness sakes, it's no secret. I mean,
Right.
But again, it's all it's all words and no action regarding this.
Well,
So-
again, but let me be very clear on that. It was the seniors above us.
Well, yes, right.
We were
right.
fighting to the very end to do something about these knuckleheads, but yes.
Right. Not the foot soldiers who were willing
No.
to do something about it.
Right.
So, in the Encore file too, and this is sensitive, at the time it was sensitive because the FBI tried their damnedest to hold this guy's name secret from the public. There was a partly declassified page of the Encore file that cited evidence that a Saudi official whose name was all redacted in the Encore file, but his name was left unredacted, I think on purpose, in a court filing in the Southern District of New York. This person tasked Fahad al-Tameri and Omar al-Bayoumi with assisting Khalid al-Badr while they entered the United States. Now, for those who don't know, Fahad al-Tameri is the imam at the King Fahd Mosque in Culver City, and Omar al-Bayoumi is an associate of Fahad al-Tameri. Now, nobody knew his name until that court filing came out, and his name was Muassed al-Jarrah. And he's the former director of the Islamic Affairs at Saudi Arabia's Washington, D.C. office. And he has a huge connection. In the Encore files itself, Anthony, it basically says, and this is the FBI's talking, right? They basically found out that this guy basically had connections with terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, and would hire extremist Wahhabi clerics in embassies and mosques throughout the United States.
Right.
That's coming from the Encore files. Now,
right.
His identity, again, was kept from the government. Government kept this information from the public, even from the 9/11 victims' families' law firm, Creedler and Creed. I mean, for God's sakes. And it's a huge, now his name is public. But, I mean, even I can understand why the public doesn't need to see it and whatnot, but the victims' families not to know, because they pressured.
Right.
The the Obama and Trump administrations, but they were again protecting their interests.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that?
So again, it goes back to the reluctance from those who were in official governance to confirm any factual link between those who funded the attacks and our government. I think our government was far more directly involved in all this because of the amount of either sources and methods. That's a popular
Right.
term that Chris Wray doesn't want to talk about. Well, what you're seeing here is sources and methods gone wrong. I mean, think about it. They talk about, oh, we don't want to talk about. So, well, you're looking at it here. You're looking at how bad it can go with people who are either committed to the destruction of the United States or completely oblivious to what they're doing. I think it's the former, not the latter. I think they knew what they were doing. This is sources and methods right here. It's Adam, this is like that scene in Close Encounters of the Third Kind where Richard Dreyfuss is building that potato. That potato is like, this means something. This means something. This is important. This is that mound. This is sources and methods. This is what happens when they're forced to disclose it. And it's not a pretty picture because it's all wrong here. So the families deserve to know. And more importantly, it adds to a pattern of wrongdoing by the federal government, the FBI in particular, showing that they were either complicit or incompetent or complicit. I think it's complicit because I think, again, if you don't know what these guys are going to do, if they're given the opportunity, then there's something really wrong. I think they knew that they were poking the bear and they wanted the bear to go do what it did. So
I can't disagree with this. And and people who know me, I'm very strict when it comes to speculation and conjecture, but I cannot disagree with this notion because now with more information coming out over time, I'm like, wow, this is enormous amount of information that they had at their disposal. They didn't even act on it.
Right.
So, I mean, look, I'll even give you, like, we're throwing dirt on people, might as well keep going. So in 2019, September of 2019, President Trump had met with victims' families, and they told him, can we have more information about whoever this Saudi official was? Trump promised him that he would. But somebody down the line went against Trump and redacted the information, and that was Attorney General William Barr.
Yeah.
And he gave a public statement about it, too.
Yeah.
No less,
look,
confirming it was state secrets.
I've had my run-ins with Bill Barr myself, so,
tell me about it.
They're very public, yes. So look, again, this goes back to this. There's some shadowy entity within the government that is unaccountable to either political party. They do their own thing. And I think Bill Barr was part of it. Again, I'm speaking from direct, having Bill Barr call and yell at me over the fact that I was trying to have a whistleblower report on something. And I was ordered to give him up, and I didn't, and I got fired. So, trust me, this is something I've suffered a couple of times now.
Right.
And Bill Barr, Chris Wray, there's folks within the federal government who are committed to a certain direction of things, no matter which political party is in charge. And Trump, I think Trump was trying to do the right thing. Full disclosure to your audience, I was a National Security Advisor to Trump 2020. I advised a number of folks within his administration. But I do believe, based on my own direct experience regarding Bill Barr and election issues and Able Danger, that no, there are things within the government that just decide, we're just going to do something this way and we don't care what we're told to do. And that's a very dangerous thing. And that includes this issue regarding Encore with the FBI. This includes issues relating to, again, Anwar al-Awlaki. Well, Adam, why do you think Obama ordered Awlaki's assassination as an existential threat when he's in Yemen with his son? Who does that?
And he's an American.
And he's American citizen. What? Who does that? Oh, he was an existential threat. No, he wasn't. He was living in the middle of a desert with his son, probably wishing he actually had his house back in San Diego. I'm telling you right now, that was done as a matter of cleaning up whatever we're talking about here. There was no reason to assassinate him. That was done with purpose. And again, I am when it comes to this, adamant about the fact that someone needs to be held accountable for an assassination of an American citizen. That, to me, is unconscionable. We should never do that. If you're really that worried about that person, we have the best special operations forces in the world. They could have captured the guy and brought him back. There's no doubt in my military mind that could have been done. So.
Oh, sure. And look, his son Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, he actually was killed separately. And on top of it, just to throw more mud on Obama here, Obama actually drone strike bolted him. In fact, Abdul Rahman was in a restaurant, and 6 other people were killed with him, and they weren't even with him. They were just sitting near him. So
look,
unprecedented. I mean, here's a guy who basically just said, "To hell with rule of law."
Exactly. Well, look, Christine Ferrer, a progressive, and I, as a conservative, was on Dylan Radigan's show on MSNBC saying, I was saying, this is stupid. We're stop the droning. It's not helping us. And Christine Ferrer, a progressive, a Democrat, was saying, oh no, this is the best thing ever. It's like, talk about a role reversal. It's like, no, I mean, correct. It was crazy. It was crazy. So
when did you become the neocon? I mean, I just, yeah, it's a flip.
It's true.
But I know it is true. I mean, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So, so 2 years later, all right, here comes the real bombshells, the Canestraro document.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, for those who don't know, and let me quickly fill you in, 2016, Canestraro investigated deeply the connection of Saudi intelligence and the CIA involvement with 2 future 9/11 hijackers, but were al-Qaeda operatives Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Now, as in the interviews with and he interviewed a number of former FBI, CIA, and 9/11 Commission officials that hid their names because they want to come out with their names. And so they revealed to him that there was an illegal covert intelligence operation in 2000, 2001 that included the CIA and Saudi intelligence, the Mahabeth, also known as the General Intelligence Directorate, that included 2 known al-Qaeda, to hell with, armchair quarterback, and we knew they were 9/11 hijackers, but they were known al-Qaeda operatives, just came from a high-level summit meeting in Malaysia, and pictured with the planner, the mastermind of the Cole bombing, Tawfiq Bektash, also known as Khalid.
Right.
The FBI was investigating that too. Now, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi left a high-level, like I said, terrorist meeting in Malaysia, and the FBI was investigating all this, along with the CIA and the NSA. However, there was a concerted effort by the CIA and the NSA to not share this information with either the State Department or the FBI.
Yeah.
Canestraro goes a little bit further. And now he says, no, they were actually, not only were they doing that, but they were inside the United States. Now, CIA by law is not allowed to conduct operations inside the United States. Here they are with the Saudis conducting and a monitoring operation of 2 men that they were hoping to flip.
Yeah. So where to begin? So there's a book out. I don't know if you read it. Peter Lance, my friend Peter Lance, did a book called Triple Cross, How Bin Laden's Master. So highly recommend people read that as a primer to understand kind of the depth of all this, because that all is related. And to your point, there was a lot of belief, Adam, by the big brains of CIA that they were going to control these guys. I was once told by someone who was close to CIA, he was working with CIA cooperatively, and when I was doing Able Danger, he called me in as a senior executive guy, and he said, why are you so focused on Able Danger? I don't understand. These guys, we've got them under control. They're fine. It's like, I don't think that's true. No. It's these guys, there's so much fundraising done by al-Qaeda and its shadow affiliates. They would never jeopardize and bite the hand that fed them. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy's like, I don't know where this guy's coming from, because this is not the reality I'm seeing from directly, helping SOCOM organize going after these guys. These guys are aggressive. It's like ants, like fire ants. They've decided they're going to do something. They're making their lair, and they're reaching out and going to do things. They're going to bite you. And that's what my assessment was. And it was like, these guys at the senior level, to include what we're talking about here, all thought they were smarter than the average bear when it came to al-Qaeda. And I think they were either buffaloed. I think they were told by these assets at the Saudi level and that they were told what they wanted to hear, or just were stupid. I don't know which it was, but or complicit, because, who's to say that they didn't know that they were going to do it and
Correct.
let it happen anyway, because they were definitely in control. And I think that's where Don needs to go with this. Okay, he's made the stipulation. I think it's true, but what do we do now? Where do they go with it? Because really, it's really on them, on Don, to figure out what this means for his clients, because that's where it needs to go next. And I think that's where more information needs to come out.
And he brings up a problem regarding the Bin Laden Industry Station, codename Alex Station, and said that it was very an unusual setup, that the people in charge were analysts.
Yes.
And that is not usually the case. Regarding,
Michael Schroyer was an analyst. That's correct. Yeah, and they were all political. Look, I'll say something may get me in trouble, but analysts are traditionally way more political than operators. I'm an operator.
Right. Yeah.
I tend to just go out and just try to figure things out. It's if your ass is outside doing things and getting yourself in trouble and going into danger, you tend to be very, very clear on the truth. It's like, yeah, there's bad guys over there and they're going to try to kill me. Analysts seem to always want to overanalyze, if I could coin a term. And yeah, I think Alex Station was an issue station, not an operational station. Let's be clear on that. But they were managing operations. They were. Now, I don't think it was proper. Matter of fact, one of the times when things went really bad is when they put an analyst in charge of the station in Saudi Arabia, a guy named John Brennan. You probably heard of him. It was during his watch that they had the Khobar Towers attack that killed a bunch of Americans. And some say he knew about that in advance. Just saying. I don't know. So.
Well, he was also I think he was also the consular head at the Jeddah U.S. consulate, where a number of I think it was 11 of the muscle hijackers of 9/11 had gotten their visas through the visa program.
That's another link. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now in the Canestraro, now this was a really big bombshell, because this involves an analyst that hardly anyone knows about, but thanks to Ray Noloshilsky and John Duffy, those two guys are great. They wrote a book called Watchdogs Didn't Bark, and they really pressured the CIA in revealing a name that really put them in big trouble, and they did it anyway. So anyway, the FBI, Canestraro was interviewing an FBI agent who was tasked to the Bin Laden Industry Station.
Yeah.
And this agent overheard James Pavitt, the director of operations, discuss with the DCI, George Tenet, about a person who was intentionally kept hidden from the 9/11 congressional investigations, who turned out to be Michelle Ann Casey. And let me tell you why. Now, remember, for those who don't know, Michelle Ann Casey is the one person who told Mark Rossini and Doug Miller not to share the information regarding the Central Intelligence report about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wahab coming to the United States, and that they had dual U.S. visas. She got that order from Tom Wilshire, who's the deputy director of Bin Laden Industry Station.
Yeah.
But she told Mark Rossini about this. Now, in the book Jawbreaker, written by Gary Bernstein actually says when he was heading Jawbreaker, he's replaced by none other than Richard Blee.
Yeah.
Richard Blee brings with him Michelle Ann Casey.
Yes, of course. Yeah, and by full disclosure, he and I are friends. Not Blee.
Gary Bernstein. Right.
Gary and I are friends. Yeah.
Poor Gary. What? I don't know why I know why they pulled him off, so that the Blee and Casey doesn't have to come under fire.
No, he was stirring. He wanted to go in and get Bin Laden. He was stirring trouble up. He wouldn't back off.
And he was that close. And by the way, that's another story in its own.
That's another story. It's another story.
Yeah.
And for your audience to do, I mean, if you really want to read there was that book that leads up to the 9/11. Is it the Dark Tower? I think it is.
Oh,
is that the name?
I think you're right. It's
the Dark Tower. Read the Dark Tower. Read Gary Bernstein's book, Jawbreaker, and then read my book, Darkheart. You see the pattern,
right?
The shadow of what we're talking about is all hidden within those three books. So yeah,
right,
yeah, I know.
Right, because your book actually interlines with Jawbreaker.
Right, and I pick up after Jawbreaker. Right,
that's right, correct. Now, that was another finding by Canestraro. Now, there was another one that another FBI agent tells Canestraro that Omar al-Bayoumi was instructed by Fahad al-Dameri to collect as much information from Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in the hopes of playing as sympathizers to what they were doing here in the United States, what was their what operations they're running on, if there was any, and whatnot, in the hopes of trying to recruit them as informants,
Right.
wittingly or unwittingly, for Saudi intelligence run by the CIA, and
Right,
that
right.
this meeting between the two were seen by eyewitnesses at the King Fahd Mosque, for which, again, the Operation Encore files did mention as well.
Right.
Now, another FBI agent from San Diego said that not only did the CIA do that, but they also had a previous intelligence file on Omar al-Bayoumi in the 90s.
Yeah. I don't doubt it.
I couldn't believe when I read that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's all related. I'm telling you, and it's all related. They knew this, and so this was all a large spider web that was woven deeply. These agencies were all doing different things. And remember, another thing that, again, I will restate because I talked about last time. We, Able Danger, were outside of the whole mess. We were purposely started completely independent of all this other drama. We were told, start from scratch, figure it out.
Right.
So everything we were doing was not only compartmented and separate. We didn't have their information. They wouldn't share it with us. So everything we came up with was done through the then brand new data mining technology, which now everybody uses, but we were the first to actually use it.
Right.
And then taking what we could get from NSA as the validator of what we found. We weren't involved in all these reindeer games that CIA and FBI were involved in.
Right.
Matter of fact, we were trying to push information in the end over to the FBI, to their bin Laden unit at WFO, Washington Field Office, which we were prevented from doing because of the Gorelick memo. But so this is why people, I think, May's like, well, how come you guys were separate? Because we were separate, because we were designed to be completely separate for operational security issues. So this is where I have no doubt, I have no direct knowledge, but I have no doubt that what Don has reported and everything's coming out existed because I know how things work. I know how bureaucracies work. But this is what concerns me as an American citizen and someone who was involved in this and had to respond to it, is that I think there was a naive, for those who didn't know what they were doing, they were naive.
Right.
For those who actually were witting of what was going on, were evil because they permitted these things to get in place. And I'm telling you right now, if you're dealing with a snake, it's going to bite you, no matter how well you think you're going to train it. And that's what happened here, I think. So.
And it goes deep even with that. So now, we could connect Bayoumi to the government because also in the file itself, even though it's only 22 pages, this was condensed amazingly. And Canestraro mentions in the document that Omar al-Bayoumi was also being paid by the former U.S. Saudi ambassador to the United States, Bandar bin Sultan, through his wife, Haifa bin Faisal, who had an account through Riggs Bank.
And she was involved in a lot of that, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, were even hesitant to hand over providing documents and financial records to the FBI,
right? Because
they were being pressured by White House officials not to reveal that information.
Right.
So, right, again, like you said, there's a direct link between U.S. federal government, Saudi government, and militants inside the United States.
And then, Adam, I just asked people to remember that what was the one group of people that George Bush personally made sure got off on the 12th of September.
That's the
in
bin
2001.
Family,
the Saudis. The Saudis. He got them all out. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Richard Clarke once said, basically, that he didn't approve of this, but he had reluctantly agreed to it to protect Saudi interests. But the FBI basically did a haphazard investigation on, they wanted to do follow-ups with these people that were leaving.
Yeah.
But they couldn't do it to everybody because they did, basically in the middle of the night.
Right. Exactly.
That was pressure from Bandar bin Sultan and the United States federal government, Bush and Cheney itself, to protect their interests.
Exactly.
In Saudi. I mean, let me push the envelope even further with you, if I may.
Sure.
Now, you also had, this wasn't mentioned in the Canestraro file. It's not mentioned in the Encore file, but it is mentioned in a memorandum called the Gerald Shea memo. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
Okay. Gerald Shea is a retired corporate lawyer out of San Obispo, California. And what he did was basically had a very, out of his own dime, by the way, basically had a small group, I think it was like 4 or 5 people, and basically got all the arrest records of another foreign intelligence ring, which was even bigger than the Saudis. And that's the Israeli art student ring. And this basically had 200, 250 people that were involved, and they were all living in towns like Houston, Texas, and Hollywood, Florida. And basically, these were towns that also that had the 9/11 hijackers living inside.
Right.
Was Able Danger aware of this? Was were you aware of this at all?
So as I said before, I mean, several times, we were not aware of specific geographic locations up to a certain point, because so much of what we were trying to do is understand linkages. And let me re-explain everything for your audience to understand more clearly. The 93 bombers were the start point. We basically took and looked at each individual and digitized them as at their profiles. They said, look, we said, look, this guy was of this age, he was this religious sect, et cetera, et cetera. We put that into an algorithm. And then we did the searching. Basically, we did all the searching that we talked about, the 6 months of data, and we looked for 5 different data points. Travel patterns, linkages to known Al-Qaeda leadership, certain training or knowledgeability relating to weapons, arms, or that sort of thing, education, and obviously religious, where they've been regarding mosques, because because the mosque system was being used as a command and control system. That's it. So to go to that level of knowledge, we didn't know any given day where they were at. That if a determination was made that a certain cell was popping up of interest, that's where you do a targeting package to a specific tiered unit. That basically, there's 3 tiers. So that's how the process works. So no, we never got to that level of granularity, unfortunately. Not to say we didn't want to, but we never got to that level.
You're right. You just never got to that point.
Never got there.
Let's. What do you think is going to happen next? I mean, first of all, let me get your thoughts on.
Yeah.
Are you disappointed with the lack of coverage regarding the Canestraro doc?
I am, because I mean, to me, this is a smoking gun, literally a smoking gun.
Really, yes.
And I saw it in the media, and I sent a note to Don. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And but nobody else seemed to respond to it. And I've sent it to some folks in the mainstream media. They seem to be kind of unfazed by it. And it's really funny, because a couple of them like, well, Tony, we don't doubt you. It's like, that's not my point. It's not the point. You don't doubt me.
Right.
The point is, you should be doing something actively to confirm these other things. It's not about me. It's like, it's like, well, we know, we really believe you told the truth. That's not it.
Right.
There's more out there than my story, than Able Danger. There's all these other things which need to be woven together. And that's why I did with Stephen Gardner. In my second interview with Stephen, I said, look, these are all the dangling participles. The issues relating to decisions to not assassinate bin Laden, the issues of what's his name, the National Security Advisor, going into the National Archives and stealing documents in his socks and underwear.
It says Sandy Berger.
Sandy Berger. Sandy Berger stole the Able Danger information. He stole anything that was even slightly representative of the fact that Bill Clinton was told there were options to do something to stop the 9/11 hijackers. That's what they took out. That's what he stole. He was told. And by the way, both parties supported them going in there. Anyone else would have been locked up for the rest of their lives to steal top secret SCI beyond top secret documents, and you get your clearance suspended for 6 months and you get it back. Who does that? So if you go through and look at all the dangling participles, all these things that are floating out there, which have been pushed out and made unrelated by the narrative, if you actually put it together, if you put together the mosaic and these pieces start overlapping, you see the pattern, the larger pattern of something. of something, that mashed potato pile. This means something. And it's time, and I think Don is going to continue to push more information out because he's hot on this. I think he knows way more than he's letting on. I think there's more out there than he can let on at this point. I don't know that. He didn't tell me that.
Right.
I'm theorizing, I believe, based on conversations I've had in the past, and that's going to be up to him to break this loose. But yes, I mean, that's a long answer to your question. Like, yes, I'm very disappointed that more people didn't notice. But then again, they didn't notice when John Crane, who was the senior investigator of Able Danger, came out and said, hey, they set up Shaffer. I was part of the setup. We were told to make them look crazy. And yes, we found the data in this top secret computer that Jim Clapper controlled, but we were told to pretend we didn't see it. I mean, things like that. You'd think people would pay attention, but what do I know?
Let's hypothesize.
Sure.
What do you think the latest revelations from Canestraro now will pressure the White House to pressure the lawyers to make a deal with the Guantanamo Five of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, Tawfiq bin Attash, Mustafa al-Hawsawi, and Ammar al-Baluchi?
Wow, that's
an
excellent question, Adam. I don't know. I mean, this is a point of diminishing returns for the government, no matter what, because they're going to have to fish or cut bait regarding prosecuting those guys. I'm one of those. I lean libertarian on this. Adam, the moment you torture someone, you kind of throw out any ability to try them honestly. You know what I'm saying? It's like they were tortured. And so I don't know what they intend to do. With that said, and if they're going to go for the defense, they ought to go all the way. It's like, yeah, they should state flat out that the government was a co-conspirator and just see what happens and make it undeniable that something has to be done. I think you and I have agreed on this. There needs to be a completely independent, qualified reinvestigation of the 9/11 attacks.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And this is a good place to start it. So I hope Don will continue to have the fortitude and courage to do the right thing. I think he will. And he's got to push the government to make to that point of bristance, to make a decision. Do they prosecute and let this all kind of fly, or do they cut a deal? And even if they cut a deal, I think that indicates to me then the government is folding its hand because they know that it would go against them.
Right.
Badly.
Now let me get your thoughts on this next question.
Okay.
All right. But when the CIA tortured them, do you think, and this is a pretty bold question, so if I don't get a definitive answer, do you think that the reason why they did that was so that the public cannot definitively know what the government had in terms of evidence?
That's a great question, but I think based on my direct knowledge of that era, there was this bloodlust, Adam. I talk about it in Dark Heart a little bit because I was offered a role in Copper Green. I don't think I called it that. I think it was, but it was Copper Green, which was the DoD interrogation program. And I'm telling you right now, people were using enhanced interrogation just because they could. I'm just telling you. And anybody who understands enhanced interrogation understands that once you start using it, they're going to eventually tell you something just to make you go away. Mm-hmm. There's no good that comes from that. And despite the narrative put forward by the Cheney folks, there was not a single shred of usable intelligence which was developed from the torture. Nothing. Zero. Not a thing. And again, I've said I would not necessarily never use enhanced interrogation. I've never felt the need to do it. Right. I'm kind of retired now, so the chances are very unlikely that I'll ever have to. But those interrogations, which I have done and have done successfully, did not require any physical manhandling or torture. So I don't believe they did it to. I don't think they did it to spoil evidence. I don't think they did it for that purpose. I think they were just knuckleheads who wanted to torture. And I hate to say that, but I wasn't in the CIA program, but I'm just telling you what I saw in the DoD program. If they were kind of like minds, which I think they had a lot of the same thinking behind both programs, I think they just did it because they could.
I think you hit nail on the head, because I interviewed a Guantanamo detainee in Mohamedou al-Slahi, and there was a film named after him, The Mauritanian, and the things that he was telling me and that I've read in this book makes me, and I'm unmoved. Usually I'm very unemotional, but the brutal nature of the torture.
They did things
methods.
way worse than waterboarding.
Well,
Adam.
it was just ridiculous.
I'm just saying, and we didn't
Right.
do. I mean, some of the stuff we did was bad enough that we DOD, but I'm telling you, CI was way worse, way worse.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was close. I don't know where. Like, I think it's just depravity on their part.
I agree,
But
so that's why I don't think they had any plan to spoil the
sully
evidence.
right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Anthony.
Yeah.
You're a busy guy. I mean, you are all over the place. You're hard to track down. You're always on the move. What projects are you working on right now?
So right now we've launched a new think tank since we last spoke, Project Sentinel. Project Sentinel is projectsentinel.net. People can look it up. We're basically trying to find a path back to constitutional governance. We believe that Congress needs to grow a backbone and do a lot more oversight and be responsible of what's going on. Some of the 9/11 stuff we've talked about today, Adam, was as a result of pressure from members of Congress who I respect. Kurt Weldon.
Oh,
God
sure.
bless Kurt Weldon for the Able Danger stuff. He was completely threw his career away, pushing us across the finish line. My late friend Walter Jones, who eventually got the 29 pages released. Louis Gohmert and others behind the scenes who have been adamant about trying to get stuff out. So I support Congress. They need to have more people with courage who are willing to do those hard things and force the federal government to give up information. And so that's what Project Sentinel is looking at, is how we can do that with Congress. And then obviously you mentioned chain of command. We're doing some production stuff relating to looking at how DOD is doing things. And look, I badmouth DOD all the time, but there are good men and women trying to do the hard work of protecting the nation. I always try to give them credit for where credit's due. So we're working on that. And then just doing things. We just did a thing on, Stephen Gardner is a great example of what I'm doing as well, where I'm just trying to educate public on national security issues, big and small. And look, Adam, I appreciate your courage and your fortitude. I appreciate the fact you stuck with this. We need far more people to be curious about these issues that are unresolved, and that's part of what I do. Why I do what I do. I just want people to think. I don't care what they conclude, but they need to have the intellectual integrity to ask the question and demand answers. So that's what I'm up to.
You know, you make me red-faced, but yeah, no, I look. I think your story needs to be told. I was very interested in your story years and years back. I wrote an article based on Able Danger, got in touch with you, and I was very grateful that you came on the show. And I thank you again for coming back on and discuss this most important issues regarding the latest revelations. Anthony Shaffer, London Policy Research Director, author of Operation Dark Heart. I'll link the book in the description.
Thank you.
Anthony, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Adam. Good to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.